The next kind of comma usage that we're going to discuss has to do with the use of coordinate adjectives. Now we know that an adjective modifies the noun, and when you have two or more adjectives that precede a noun, sometimes those are coordinate adjectives. In that case, you need a comma. Let's take a look at what a coordinate adjective is and how it differs from a normal adjective. In this first sentence here, it was a dark, stormy night. Night is the noun, and we have two adjectives that describe that noun. The night is dark and the night is stormy. In order to check to see whether it's a coordinate adjective, you should try to put and in between. If that sounds natural, then it usually is a coordinate adjective. It was a dark and stormy night sounds natural. And so if we can use and in between the two adjectives, that means that we need a comma. It was a dark, comma, stormy night. There's a more precise definition of what a coordinate adjective is. It has to do sort of with the equality of the adjective and how the adjectives link to the noun. Let's look at this next sentence, which shows how tricky this sometimes can be. Here we have almost the exact same sentence, except for instead of stormy, we have winter. And we have, it was a dark winter night. In this case, though, if we tried to put and in between the two adjectives, so here's our noun, we have two adjectives, dark and winter. And if we tried to put an and, it wouldn't sound right. It was a dark and winter night. The reason why that doesn't sound right is that winter isn't actually really an adjective in this case. Winter night is the noun phrase. It's one object. And dark describes the type of winter night that it was. Okay? But again, just using the and test, because you wouldn't say it was a dark and winter night, then there's no comma here. Whereas because you would say it was a dark and stormy night, then you do use a comma. The next kind of comma usage that we're going to discuss is a noun of direct address. So if you're talking to somebody specifically, then you need a comma before and after that person's name, with the exception if it comes at the start of the sentence. Okay, let's look at this sentence. Mike, the reason is simple. Now Mike is being talked to. So it's Mike, comma, the reason is simple. This is who is being addressed in the sentence. Okay. And so it's Mike, comma, the reason is simple. Now if that comes in the middle of the sentence, you need commas around it. What I want to know, Mike, is what took so long. What I want to know, since Mike is still the person being talked to here, and you're saying what I want to know is what took so long, you put commas before and after Mike. What I want to know, Mike, is what took so long. So because you're addressing Mike, you put a comma after or before you use his name. The next kind of comma usage that we're going to discuss has to do with something called a non-essential information. Non-essential information means that it's not necessary in order to identify the noun. Okay? My house, which is on the corner, burned down. My house, in this case, is the noun phrase. Which is on the corner is information about where my house was. And burn down is the verb. So here we have my house, which is on the corner, burned down. If I took out what is underlined with the squiggly line and just said my house burned down, you wouldn't say which house. And so this information definitely adds more information. It's not that it's meaningless, it's that it's not necessary to identify the noun. So because this is non-essential information, I would say my house, comma, which is on the corner, comma, burned down. Whereas if I change the sentence very slightly, the house that is on the corner burned down. The house burned down. That is on the corner is very similar to which is on the corner. But in this case, if I said the house burned down, you would say which house burned down? And I would have to say, oh, the house on the corner burned down. And so in this case, there's not any commas needed because this is not non-essential information. It's essential information. It's necessary to identify the noun that you're talking about. In fact, that's the difference between which and that. If it's a clause that's non-essential information, you use which. And if it's a clause that's essential information, you use that. Another example of this is a familiar way to start a literary analysis paper. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger helps many teachers deal with high school. Okay, The Catcher in the Rye is the noun. By J.D. Salinger is information about that noun and helps many teenagers deal with high school. If I dropped the part of the sentence that's underlined with the squiggly line, and I just said, The Catcher in the Rye helps many teenagers deal with high school, you wouldn't say, which Catcher in the Rye? And so if I said, The Catcher in the Rye, it should be The Catcher in the Rye, comma, by J.D. Salinger, comma, helps many teenagers deal with high school. Again, you put commas around the squiggly line because it's non-essential information. It's not necessary to identify the noun. However, if I took the sentence and made it, The novel by J.D. Salinger helps many teenagers deal with high school, then you don't need commas. Because I wouldn't be able to take out J.D. Salinger and have you understand what it is I'm talking about. If I said the novel helps many teenagers deal with high school, you would say which novel? And I'd say, oh, the one by J.D. Salinger. So the test to see whether you need commas in this case has to do with whether or not what you're surrounding with commas is essential or necessary in order to identify the noun that you're talking about. And if it is essential, then you don't need commas. In this case, it's non-essential. It's not needed to identify the noun, and so you put commas around it.